So the latest one the media have jumped on is concrete cancer for schools. And like this is a new thing. I went to what used to be a grammar school called Broadoak School in Weston-super-Mare. And basically it was falling down around our ears. We had wooden cabins outside that are rotted, so the stool of your chair would go through if you weren't careful, so you had to place yourself right. So sometimes you'd be sat there writing like this, or you'd lean back on your chair and go straight over because your foot had gone through the floor, and then the handyman would patch it up so the floor would be like the Himalayas. Some of you may well remember those wooden cabins that were just rotten as fuck, and you could see rot all around the windows, rot in the corners, and they were falling down around your ears. But those were the days where it was shut up and get on with it. And it was exactly the same for the classrooms around the quad. We'd be sat there, you'd be writing away, and a load of masonry just fall on your table. You weren't meant to make a big deal of this. All you did was you brushed it to the side of the table, didn't throw it on the floor, you got bollocking for that. Just brushed it over there, we'll deal with that later. I mean, things did get so extreme that the clock tower, they actually had to put a fence around because it literally was falling down. Which was interesting because that was where the headmaster's office was. But that's another story. But these were back in the days where you used to get board rubbers and board chalk thrown at you. Well, usually it was the chalk, and if that missed, he was so incensed he'd throw the board rubber at you. And what was worse is that if he missed again, you were expected to bring it back up so he could throw it back at you, or give you a clap. But that's the old days. That was the old days where we used to learn that a boy was a boy and a girl was a girl, and there wasn't a great deal of that in between. Sex education was something I'd heard about, but I think I missed that lesson. Sex education was one of those things you kind of learned behind the bike sheds, which was nice. But anyway, it was a totally different time there. I mean, when I went to, believe it or not, my parents tried their best to send me to a private school for a few years until that didn't work out, and I'll explain to that in a bit because it was quite funny. I went to the first school, and it was called Lancaster House, and the headmaster, his nickname was Bucket Lane because he used to be a copper who was an absolute arsehole. Went to teach him. And even in the winter, we had to go into school in our shorts when it was snowing. There was a definite element of sadism about that bloke, but whatever. And we were sat in these freezing cold classrooms on these wooden chairs with a wooden table that like lifted up and all your stuff was in there. And it used to have a hole over in the corner where I believe the ink used to go when you actually did it with fountain pen. And we did beautiful joined up writing and learned stuff like Latin at a really stupid age, which was crap because at the end of the day when I went back to state school I had to learn everything I just learned, but there it was. So I went to that school, which taught me how to toughen up quite quickly because they didn't fuck about. And then I went to another school called Ashbrook House, where all of the kids came in their parents' Rollers and Bentleys and Jags, and my parents were skin, so we rocked up in a Cortina. This was frowned upon, and the kids tried to take the piss, so I filled them in. And these little snobby little twats weren't used to having a little bit of shit kicked out of them, and this became a problem. And it was encouraged by the school that I would probably be suited somewhere else, and so I went back to state school where the kids were a lot tougher, and it was a free-for-all. But yeah, this concrete cancer business is nothing new. Thing is, when you put reinforcing steel bar in the old days into a bit of concrete, and then the concrete ends up having a way of finding water into it. I'm not an expert in concrete, but what I do know is that when water gets around this steel bar, it rusts, and the rust then blows up the concrete. Whether there's a different form of concrete cancer or concrete problems that they've got, I don't know. But this was what we had anyway. And it made for interesting schooling because you were sat in the centre of the classroom, you were pretty lucky, you didn't expect anything to fall on you. And if it did, the chances are you'd probably not know about it anyway. But towards the edges, where this concrete bit for the windows went through, yeah, the concrete fell down. And the interesting other thing is we used to have these big windows with a thing that you pulled and the whole thing tilted down, which was great, until you were looking over it and your mate was the other side and he hit it and it'd smash your jaw. This was considered sport. This is something that little snowflakes of day wouldn't be allowed, because we understood that if you threw yourself out of a window right? Depending on what level it was. I mean, on the ground level, you may be the other side and you'd hit it, and as I say, try and take your teeth out. It was considered funny. But at the same time, having a can of hairspray and lighting it and trying to set your mate's hair on fire was considered sport, and that happened. Or if you'd actually used hairspray back in the day, which some of the lads with mullets did, the other lad would go around with a lighter and try and light your hair. I remember my hair caught fire once. That was quite funny. Snag, by the way. But these are little fun things that we did. We didn't feel the need to knife each other when setting each other on fire was a lot more fun. And also, you could watch the person dance. You stab somebody, they usually fall down. It's the end of the entertainment, really. I am joking about the stabby bit, but I am not joking about setting each other on fire. We used to do pranks. Pranks were considered good fun. I mean, this is back in the day when kids actually cycled to school. I played a prank on my mate. I undid his wheel nuts. The idea was and this was the idea, that it was meant to pull the bike like that and the wheel fall off. But this didn't happen, unfortunately. What actually did happen is he made it about 3 roads away before the wheel fell off and he got thrown almost under a car. This caused me some problems. I was suspended from school, not for the first time, but the second time for that, but only at lunchtime, which really wasn't a problem anyway, because I lived down the end of the road. So I went home for lunch, because why do I want to sit around all the rest of the cunts? Which, to be honest, I didn't like school very much anyway. I have mates there, like girls and stuff like that, but school was a waste of my time. I didn't like what they were teaching, I didn't like the way they taught it, and I didn't believe half what the fucking idiots were saying. I found it so mind-numbing that after obviously going home at lunchtime and not making it back in the afternoon quite a lot of the time, I had 3 months off with glandular fever, which nearly wiped me out. That wasn't so great. I was actually allowed by the school teachers, who worked out that I was clever, had no interest, to come in with a Walkman on and just sit at the back of the class. Some of them actually said, if you don't come in, we'll mark you in, just don't interfere with the rest of the kids. I was like, right, seems like a deal. But those were teachers that actually understood I wasn't interested, and I wasn't. I was dyslexic, we didn't know. But back to the school. Other things that were interesting, it's like, we have wooden bike sheds, and we had that really strong wind of 1990, I think, or 91. And I remember one of the panels of these bike sheds, which were also falling down, which we were still allowed to use. I tried to lift it. Now I remember these kids, they were the kids whose parents had nothing, but did everything they could to put the best clothes on the kids' back, the best shoes on the kids, and the best bike, because the kids whinged on and the parents felt that they needed to do this. Well, there was this bike shed full of all these bikes of these bullying, horrible kids. And I lifted this panel up, and it got caught by this gust of wind at about 110 mile an hour. Flew. How it never took any fuckers' heads off, I will not know. But what it did do was smash straight through all these bikes. It was at that point I realised that going home was probably a good idea. And then at that point we went down the seafront. I was on a chopper bicycle, some of you may remember what they were like. And I literally got blown up the road. I was on the floor with my handlebars holding onto this bike, which is equally getting blown, and we got blown all the way up the street to the middle of the street and dumped there. And when we tried to go to the other end, pretty much near enough the same thing happened. But this was fun, so we carried on doing it. But the things we did as kids, like when it flooded down Western Seafront, and it was probably about that deep, I went through it on this chopper being blown from behind, so I didn't have to pedal, which was good, because otherwise your feet got soaked. And I just put my feet up on the 2 bars that went through to the gear stick. I went past the copper who was trying to stop me, and just went all the way through all this. There'd already been a boat washed over the wall, by the way, in 3 bits. And this is what we did. This is how us kids grew up. Do you know, whilst trying to escape this dilapidated school, we used to have PE, and they used to beast us out of the school, over the road, over this fucking golf course that had a public right of way. So you can imagine you've got an entire two or a bloody year of kids just running over their golf course, didn't go that well, up over the dunes, all the way along the seafront to the Tropicana, where somebody would stamp your hand to make sure you hadn't ducked out of it, all the way back round and back. Well, I thought to myself, I don't fancy these apples, I don't like running, I'm asthmatic, I've no interest in this shit, I'm not sporting, I can't understand them. So I had a mate who was sporting. I said, well, when you come back, just come near me, we put a bit of wet on his hand, stamp the back of mine like that, thanks very much. That's ingenuity, that's thinking, that's common sense. But this is things we did as a kid. But the parts of the school falling down around our head, we took as a given. Nowadays, they'd have shut the whole place down. The only time they actually shut that school No, there was 2 times actually. One was when the heating went off and it was minus something degrees. And it wasn't for the benefit of us kids, it'd have been the teachers that would have kicked up on that one. But anyway, the other one was asbestos. They did take that one seriously. I think we had a week or 2 off while they gutted the place of all the asbestos. That was it. And that school stayed up for the entire time that I was there, even though it was falling down, and about another 10 years, and at which point they knocked the fucker down and they built this other, more inclusive school. But I tell you what, you could go through the corridors and pick up the atmosphere of all of the kids that had gone before. It was a weird feeling in there. You could feel just how horribly hard and tough it had been in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And in comparison, us kids got it easy because they'd just given up on caning where I was at school. They just threw stuff at you instead, or did other mental torture with you, whatever. They enjoyed it. But as I say, school was shit. So all of the kids today who are having time off school because of this concrete cancer, it's another one of those wrapping people up the cock wall. Now if a brick wall's going to fall down on you, I'd understand maybe fencing that off, right? Or part of a clock tower that's 30 foot high, masonry falling down you, I get that. But a little bit, whatever. Now, obviously, there are probably cases of this concrete problem that's a lot more serious. But I just thought I'd give you some anecdotals and some of my experience of school. And maybe this will bring back memories for you. But certainly, those wooden tables with the bits that came up, or maybe even the old tables. And do you remember the plastic chairs that you used to have to stack right up? And you'd always get some fucker that'd stack them too high and the fuckers would go out, wouldn't they? But yeah, school, eh? I used to, but somebody say they have like reunited, like, so it's got Broadoak reunited, and everybody's going, are you going? No. I didn't like it the first time round. Why the fuck am I going to go now? I've no interest. But there you go. Right, I'm going to get off, do some work. We've got to pay for those hotels, haven't we? Now? I'll see you in a bit.